If you are new to our channel, please like, subscribe, hit that little bell notification. It really does help us out. 1942 to 1952. In UFO terms, probably one of the biggest decades in our history. I mean, some of the events that happened in this 10 years, we've probably got some of the best evidence to actually say that these things, for one, definitely happened, but for two, we have really good corroborating witnesses on loads of these stories. We've already started talking about the Battle of LA in 1942, which I'll add a link that'll appear up here, which really kicked this decade off. And today we're going to be talking about a few other instances and then the climax in 1952. In this 10 years, there are so many UFO instances that are really interesting. And I'll whip through a couple. Right. June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, flying over Mount Rainier, saw 9 lights flying in a formation, in like a triangular formation, like geese. Except they were really fast geese, because he estimated they were traveling at 1,700 miles an hour.
Of course, lots of other theories have been put forward to explain what Arnold saw. Donald Menzel, one of the really earliest UFO debunkers, has come up with a few. In 1953, he suggested it was snow blown up from the mountains. In 1963, he said it was orthographic or wave clouds. And then in 1971, finally, he argued it was merely spots of water on the windscreen.
It's like what? Nearly Mach 3. So, I mean...
Yeah, that would be quite quick for birds.
I think the fastest we'd gone at that point, we hadn't broken the sound barrier, so it was about 690 miles an hour or something like that was the fastest man had travelled.
Yep.
And obviously, you can obviously say, well, he was estimating, but that's part of the thing that pilots are trained to do, is to use in triangulation and to like judge distance and speed and direction, because it's really important when you're flying not to like fly into stuff.
Well, yes.
Yeah, it's quite important.
Arnold was interviewed on July the 12th by Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William Davidson. In the official report they wrote, "It is the present opinion of the interviewer that Mr. Arnold actually saw what he stated he saw. It is difficult to believe that a man of his character and apparent integrity would state that he saw objects and write up a report to the extent that he did if he had not seen them, even though the Army Air Force's official conclusion was he'd seen a mirage."
I like this on the January 7th, 1948. Again, remembering that this is just after World War II, and tension with Russia is really high. Mm-hmm. But an object was seen floating over Fort Knox, where all the gold is.
Yes.
Estimated to be 80 to 90 meters in diameter, it was seen by multiple eyewitnesses, including a Kentucky highway patrolman. Then, at 1:45 p.m., Sergeant Quinton Blackwell saw the object from his position at the tower of Fort Knox.
It was seen on radar. 3 planes chased it, one of which, commanded by a Captain Thomas Mantle, then crashed and he lost his life.
There are lots of theories to explain what happened to Captain Mantle's aircraft, including pilot error. There's even arguments about what his final words were over the radio. Air traffic controllers suggest he stated that he saw the object, it looked metallic and of tremendous size, but others argue he never actually said that.
I think they just found his plane in a field, didn't they?
Yeah.
In a farm.
Imagine the government, in a farm. You can imagine the government at that point though going, "There's an object over Fort Knox," and like, "Whoa, where the money is?" It's like, can you imagine like the government freaking out on that?
And the gold disappearing through the walls. What?
Yeah, it's just floating off. We got to do an episode on Fort Knox. There's so many good conspiracy theories about Fort Knox, especially. I like the one.
There's nothing left there, isn't there?
There's no gold. Yeah. August 1951, Lubbock, Texas. On 13 separate occasions, green lights were seen passing over.
These lights were seen by hundreds of witnesses, and Project Blue Book did investigate. They concluded it was not birds, but it was not aircraft either.
3 different people, and at the end of the month, a student actually caught an image of this as well.
On seeing these images, though, the first thing I thought about was, just looks like the Phoenix Lights from 1997.
Wow. My point is, during this decade, we have constant UFO sightings, and we haven't even mentioned the big one, which is going to be probably our next video. Obviously, Roswell.
And
in this period.
the frequency of the sightings increased dramatically in the 1940s and 50s. And that's when you start getting your first abduction stories, isn't it? About Betty and Barney Hill. That was late 50s, wasn't it, or early 60s? I think Betty. And
we'll
Barney
have to do
Hill.
a series on them though, because they're an interesting couple. I do think there was an hysteria definitely in the early 50s with Cold War and things, and UFOs were just movies were starting to be made. The Day the Earth Stood Still was made, and like really inspired by the events we're talking about in 52.
The Earth Stood Still actually came out in 1951, so maybe it's truer to say the events in Washington were inspired by the movie instead of the other way around.
Right, so if we go back a little bit, World War II, we'll talk about that. So World War II is kicking off.
Yep.
We're developing nuclear weapons. We're developing radar for the first time. We're the Americans. I mean, we had radar stations along the south coast of England, but then when the war started, we gave radar to the Americans, and they really used it. I mean, they did what they did best, and they took an idea and they had it on all their naval ships within 12 months.
They ramped up the manufacturing and production of the radar system.
They industrialized it, which is again what they do best.
The country for their country of much greater size than ours. Yes.
Yeah. So if there were UFOs flying around, they might have thought, well, that's an interesting thing off the south coast of Britain. Within 12 months, it was everywhere, and you have to wonder what the filling of the skies with this EM radiation that if there were UFOs flying around, it's probably technology they haven't seen for 1,000 years or something.
Yes, it's probably outdated technology to a more advanced race that's capable of traversing between stars. It'd be completely outdated technology.
Got to wonder if it might have affected their technology.
Yes, no, I do think that it may have affected their technology, but there is one counter argument to it that if they've got the technology to travel between the stars, do you think us using some radar dishes would really down their craft? I do wonder that. However, there is an increased number of supposed downed unidentified flying objects that started increasing dramatically after America started installing radar in about 1939 into the early 40s.
Well, this was a period as well. We were blasting. Radio was still a relatively new technology. We were blasting that into space, and so you don't know what interference that might have caused, or how it might have acted like a beacon as well, and just made the reason why we may be seeing more is because we're more interesting or becoming more interesting because we were getting to a technological level.
Yeah, I suppose it's very difficult to say because we don't know how the propulsion systems would act within these craft that may be capable of traveling between the stars, and maybe our technology could interfere with their technology in some way, but without a full understanding of their technology, you wouldn't be able to speculating whether our technology would interfere with theirs.
So glad to be talking about UFOs again after
Corona.
After Corona, it's so much
more fun, isn't it? Yeah.